Welcome to Chronicles of Lost Love, and I can't help but wonder, where in the world are you tuning in to hear our stories right now? Let's dive into today's tale. The golden light of autumn filters through the dining room window as Matteo prepares to leave for work. His wife, Lucia, has already set out breakfast for him, a cherished daily ritual they've maintained since their wedding day. "I made your favorite sandwiches today," Lucia says warmly while tidying up her lesson plans. "I'll be back this afternoon, and we can cook dinner together." Matteo smiles, leaning in to plant a gentle kiss on her cheek. These quiet moments in the early hours of the morning are among the most treasured of their 8 years of marriage. As the lead electrician at Blow El Rio, Matteo has earned the respect of his coworkers for his expertise and dedication. Despite his demanding schedule, he has always prioritized his family. The couple's story began years ago at university. At the time, Matteo was studying electrical engineering, while Lucia pursued sociology. They were mere acquaintances back then. However, a chance reunion at a mutual friend's party a few years later sparked an undeniable connection. Matteo admired Lucia's sensitivity and elegance, while Lucia was drawn to Matteo's quiet strength and gentle demeanor. After getting married, they moved into their cozy home, complete with a small garden. On weekends, Matteo often mows the lawn while Lucia tends to her herb garden. Their days together were peaceful and idyllic, their marriage like a soft serenade, tranquil and harmonious. Matteo is a man of remarkable presence. Years of physical work as an electrician have given him a muscular build, and his neatly kept blonde hair and striking blue eyes add to his rugged charm. Lucia, on the other hand, exudes intellectual elegance. Her tall frame and long black hair complement her poised demeanor. As an associate professor of sociology, Lucia is highly respected at her university. Her classes are always full, with students captivated by her rigorous approach and approachable personality. During dinner, she often shares stories from her day, and Matteo listens intently, brimming with pride over his wife's accomplishments. However, their serene life took a subtle turn one evening. Lucia came home particularly excited. "The department has assigned me a new assistant," she said while preparing dinner. "His name is Taddeo, and he's a promising graduate student. He'll be a great help with my large classes." At first, Taddeo's presence seemed to make Lucia's workload more manageable. She frequently mentioned how he assisted her in grading assignments and organizing her teaching materials. But over time, Matteo began to notice subtle shifts. Lucia started bringing up Taddeo more often in conversation. "Taddeo helped me reorganize my office schedule today," she'd say, or, "Taddeo suggested a new teaching method I might try." Even during their relaxed weekend breakfasts, Taddeo's name found its way into their conversations. Slowly, Lucia began working late more frequently. The once sacred tradition of dining together in the evening was often delayed due to her academic commitments. Occasionally, Matteo would call her office. And still, no answer. Lately, work had been extremely stressful. Lucia constantly mentioned the pressures of preparing her end-of-semester project presentation. Matteo, ever understanding of his wife's work challenges, tried to ease her burden. He began volunteering to take on more household tasks, hoping to share the load with Lucia. Every evening when she arrived home late, he ensured dinner was hot and waiting for her. Yet, despite his efforts, the emotional distance between them seemed to grow wider. Weekends, once filled with shared activities, had changed. They used to shop for groceries together or host small barbecues in the backyard, inviting a few close friends for a cozy gathering. Now, Lucia often secluded herself in her study, citing the need to grade assignments. Even on the rare occasions they went shopping, she seemed perpetually distracted. One time, while at the supermarket, Lucia's phone rang unexpectedly. She stepped away quickly, her voice so soft that Matteo could barely hear her. When he asked about it later, she dismissed it as a work thing. But the tense expression on her face lingered in Matteo's mind, etched like a vivid memory. The change had started late last fall. Just the other day, Lucia mentioned an upcoming academic seminar in Cincinnati. "This seminar is crucial for my career development," she said, her voice tinged with a rare excitement. "Many renowned scholars will be attending. Do you need me to take time off work to accompany you?" Matteo offered kindly, as he always did. Lucia's reaction was surprisingly sharp. "No," she replied, her tone unusually firm. Then, as if catching herself, she softened. "I mean, no. The schedule is packed, and we wouldn't have much time together anyway. Let's save our vacation for spring and go somewhere then." Her response left Matteo puzzled. In the past, Lucia had happily welcomed his company at similar events. Even when they were busy during the day, they always cherished the comfort of dining together at night. This sudden rejection stirred an unsettling unease in Matteo. In the days leading up to the seminar, Lucia couldn't seem to stop talking about it. She began packing unusually early, even buying new luggage. More concerning was her habit of locking some personal items in the closet, a behavior entirely unlike her. When Matteo casually inquired, she brushed it off with a calm. "Just some teaching materials and personal notes. You know how I am about privacy." Yet her nerves betrayed her. Any time Matteo got near the closet, she appeared visibly anxious. One day, while tidying up, Matteo's hand accidentally brushed against the closet door handle. Lucia practically leaped to stop him. Her reaction was so uncharacteristically intense that it left Matteo deeply unsettled. Lucia, who was always calm and composed, now seemed like a stranger, guarded, secretive, and distant. Late into the night, while Serena slept soundly in their shared bed, Matteo often found himself lying awake, lost in thought about the subtle shifts in their lives. Conversations between them had become less frequent, and even when they were in the same room, it felt as if an invisible wall stood between them. The Lucia who used to leave a light on for him when he worked late into the night seemed to have drifted into her own world. When Lucia finally left for Cincinnati, her demeanor struck Matteo as unusually exuberant. As she double-checked her suitcases with the trace of anxiety Matteo had never witnessed before, she whispered, "I'm going to miss you," from the doorway. But her eyes didn't meet his. As Matteo stood alone in the quiet house after her departure, he couldn't have imagined that this brief goodbye would unravel a chilling secret that would shatter their marriage. The subtle inconsistencies, the peculiarities he had unconsciously dismissed, would soon weave a heartbreaking tapestry of truth. The morning after Lucia left, Matteo noticed something odd. Lucia, normally meticulous to a fault, had hurriedly packed her things and forgotten to lock her private wardrobe, something she never did. This small, seemingly insignificant oversight marked a pivotal turning point. Back in the now empty home, Matteo attempted to focus on his work, but Lucia's evasive glances and uncharacteristic behavior haunted him. That evening, in an effort to distract himself, Matteo decided to tidy up his study. While organizing a drawer, a receipt from Chandler's Stationery caught his eye. It detailed the purchase of a red leather journal, bought right around the time Lucia had begun preparing for her seminar. The mention of the red journal instantly reminded Matteo of the notebook Lucia had been fiercely protective of in recent weeks. Feeling a growing sense of unease, Matteo made his way to their bedroom. Lucia had always kept her personal journal locked in her private wardrobe, an unspoken boundary they had respected throughout their marriage. But today, perhaps due to the rush of her departure, the red journal lay openly on the dresser. Matteo's hands trembled as he picked it up. In their 8 years of marriage, he had never violated Lucia's privacy, but a gnawing sense of foreboding compelled him to inspect it further. The journal was locked. However, Matteo remembered a box of Lucia's belongings they had packed when they moved in together. Hoping it might contain the key, he went to his study, rifling through an old wardrobe until he found a dusty shoebox tucked away in the furthest corner. Holding his breath, Matteo opened the box to find 6 identical red leather journals, each marked with a small white circle and numbered 1 through 6. They, too, were from Chandler's stationery. At the bottom of the box, Mateo discovered a small envelope containing a key. Returning to his seat in the study, Mateo inserted the key into the lock of the sixth journal. As the latch clicked open, his heart raced so violently it felt like it might leap from his chest. The opening pages recounted familiar details: Lucia's passion for teaching, her excitement for their shared future. But as he turned the pages, Mateo's hands began to shake uncontrollably. Today, Tadeo came to my office for the first time," one entry read. "The new assistant coach is younger and more charming than I expected. His professionalism impressed me, but for some reason, I find myself wanting to know more about him." The following entries cut through Mateo like a blade. "Tadeo always stops by my office in the afternoons when no one else is around. Today, after everyone had left, he closed the door. I knew I should have stopped him, but I felt nervous and—" The words blurred on the page as Mateo's world crumbled around him. Each revelation in the journal unraveled a piece of the life he thought he knew, leaving him spiraling into a darkness he wasn't prepared to face. Mateo's heart raced with a mix of fear and excitement as he approached the diary. It was a sensation he could neither ignore nor fight. Feeling overwhelmed, he rose from his seat and headed to the kitchen to pour himself a whiskey. The burning sensation of the alcohol helped ground him momentarily, yet the inner ache only became more pronounced. Memories of recent months flooded his mind: Lucia's postponed dinners, the mysterious phone calls, and her unusual obsession with the Cincinnati seminar. It all pointed to something undeniable. Returning to his study, Mateo forced himself to continue reading the diary. Each page painted a vivid picture of betrayal, recounting how a casual acquaintance had evolved into a deliberate affair. Every word felt like a dagger to the heart of their marriage. "Tadeo told me today that he's in love with me," one entry read. "It's madness, and I know it's wrong, but I can't help how I feel. Every time I see him, my heart races uncontrollably. I never thought this would happen, but now I can't stop thinking about him." Mateo's breath hitched as he read about the hotel workshop. "A room adjacent to the conference at the Sciaton Hotel," Lucia had written. "Tadeo and I can spend 3 days together. I know it's risky, but I can't stop myself anymore." Unable to bear it, Mateo put down the diary and stared out the window. The streetlights below seemed lonely against the night sky, mirroring his solitude. He needed more concrete proof. After a restless night, he resolved to seek professional help. The next morning, Mateo meticulously researched local detective agencies online, comparing reviews and services. He eventually chose Pierce Investigations, renowned for its expertise. When he called, his voice was unusually calm as he inquired, "Do you handle marital infidelity cases?" The operator quickly connected him with an experienced detective. "My name is Francis," the man said. "I've been in the business for 20 years. Tell me about your situation." Mateo gave a concise account, emphasizing the details about the hotel. Francis listened intently, taking detailed notes, before outlining a plan. "We can install hidden cameras at the hotel," he explained. "Our team is skilled at ensuring everything remains discreet. The cost is $3,000, which covers installation and photographic evidence." While the detectives prepared their operation, Mateo continued to pore over Lucia's diary. The entries chronicled every detail, from her first meeting with Tadeo to their intimate conversations and even her conflicted emotions. Through her words, Mateo began to piece together a vivid portrait of Tadeo, a cunning young man who leveraged his job to manipulate married women without raising suspicion. Despite the turmoil, Mateo maintained a facade of normalcy. He arrived at work on time, engaged with colleagues, and even called Lucia at night. But each conversation filled him with a sense of disgust as he detected the unmistakable excitement in her voice. Mateo's last glimmer of hope shattered when Francis delivered the first batch of surveillance photos. The images showed Lucia and Tadeo entering and leaving the hotel together, their demeanor intimate and carefree, completely immersed in their shared world. That night, Matteo sat in his study, diary in hand, confronting the undeniable reality of his unraveling life. With the photos spread out before him, Matteo's thoughts drifted to his first date with Lucia. He remembered her radiant smile, their wedding day, and the life they had built together over the years. All those cherished memories were now tainted by betrayal. As he examined the profile carefully, he noticed an important detail. Tadeo's address was mentioned in one of the scheduled meetings. The message felt like a twist of fate, and Matteo meticulously wrote down the address. As the evidence piled up, a strange sense of calm began to take hold of him. It wasn't the calm of relief. It was the calm before the storm. Taking out a brand new notebook, he started outlining his plans. Every detail had to be flawless, every move calculated. He began listing the tasks ahead, handling the bank accounts, gathering the necessary equipment, and mapping out the route. His years of experience as an electrician had gifted him with a deep understanding of how to avoid surveillance and move without leaving a trace. Those hard-earned skills were now becoming his greatest asset. Late at night, as he closed his journal, a distant rumble of thunder echoed through the sky. A storm was brewing, much like the fury building inside him. Tomorrow, his plan would set into motion. For now, all he could do was wait for the perfect moment. Rain began tapping against the window pane as Matteo stood in front of it, gazing at the dark, ominous sky. He knew this plan would change their lives forever, but there was no turning back now. On this sleepless night, only one thought consumed him: everything would come to an end in the final act. When the morning came, Matteo awoke with clarity. The sleepless night had left his mind sharper than ever, and he understood that every step forward had to be executed with precision and care. The first task was financial preparation. Matteo drove to a bank branch on the outskirts of town, a location deliberately chosen to avoid recognition by local staff and sidestep any unnecessary complications. "I need to withdraw $8,000 from the joint account," he told the teller calmly. To the routine inquiry that followed, Matteo was ready with a convincing answer. The money was for home improvement deposits. As he waited for the withdrawal, his mind replayed the conversation he'd had the night before with Francis. The seasoned private investigator had advised him to diversify his funds and shared several secure methods to handle the situation. After leaving the first bank, Matteo headed to another branch and withdrew $4,000 from his personal account. By midday, he stopped by a small electronics store tucked away in a quiet area to purchase a prepaid phone. "It needs to be as basic as possible," he told the clerk. "Just for calls and texts." He paid in cash, careful to leave no trace of the transaction. Back at home, Matteo received the first detailed surveillance reports from Francis. The skilled detective had quickly contacted his insider at the Sheraton Hotel, a night shift security supervisor. Thanks to this connection, they managed to install miniature cameras in the hallways near the targeted rooms and adjacent common areas. "Our equipment is specially designed," Francis explained over the phone. "Unless someone knows exactly where to look, it's nearly impossible to detect them." With the first pieces of the puzzle falling into place, Matteo's plan was beginning to take shape. But the storm was far from over, and the final act was yet to unfold. "We only operate in public, legal areas." At 3 p.m., new photos arrived. Francis's team captured Lucia and Tadeo meeting in the lobby of a hotel. The two were photographed behaving intimately, showing no concern for the gazes of others around them. Most striking was the familiar smile on Lucia's face, a smile that once had belonged to someone else. Later, they headed to the hotel cafe. Francis added that their team managed to overhear part of their conversation from a nearby table. The topic? Weekend plans. This new revelation only strengthened Matteo's resolve to take action. He began working on his next move: the reconnaissance. The first step was to gather information about Tadeo's residence. According to an address logged in a journal, it was an apartment building located in a university district. At 6 p.m., Matteo drove to the site, carefully choosing dinner time, a moment when most people are preoccupied and less likely to notice a stranger's presence. He found a nearby parking spot and, with calculated casualness, pretended to be a passerby walking his dog. Slowly, he observed the apartment building. As he expected, security was minimal: an outdated access control system, a few security cameras, and several blind spots that stood out like glaring vulnerabilities. With his expertise as an electrician, Matteo quickly identified the weak points of the setup. Using his phone, he meticulously documented the details: the location of cameras, the scope of the blind spots, and the specific model of the access system. A new photo and an update. While Matteo was immersed in his reconnaissance, Francis sent another photo. This time, it showed Lucia and Tadeo dining together at the hotel restaurant. The accompanying message revealed that they had made reservations for the following evening. This pattern of regular meetings seemed to be solidifying into a predictable routine. The plan takes shape. Back home, Matteo began organizing the gathered information into a detailed plan. He divided his cash into portions, each placed in separate envelopes labeled with their purpose: travel expenses, lodging, emergency funds. He deliberately set aside a portion of his funds for unforeseen needs, ensuring he was ready for any potential scenario. To secure his communications, Matteo began using a newly acquired prepaid phone exclusively for contacting Francis and the detectives. His personal phone remained in regular use to avoid raising any suspicion. At 8 p.m. sharp, Lucia called. Her voice was filled with excitement. "Today's seminar was amazing!" she exclaimed. "I met so many interesting fellows." "That sounds great," Matteo replied, his tone so calm it surprised even himself. "Have fun." After hanging up, he continued fine-tuning his plan. Based on the information Francis had provided, Lucia and Tadeo adhered to a consistent daily schedule: mornings at the seminar, private time in the afternoon, and dinner together in the evening. This predictable routine played perfectly into Matteo's strategy. The morning moves. The next morning, Matteo woke early and reviewed the latest report Francis had sent the previous night. The detective team had captured footage of Lucia and Tadeo returning to their hotel room together in the early hours of the morning. Security recordings from the hotel lobby showed their unmistakably intimate behavior. Armed with this new information, Matteo headed back to Tadeo's apartment complex. This time, he posed as a delivery courier, blending seamlessly into the environment as he prepared for the next phase of his plan. He carefully observed the way the apartment door opened and noted the location of the mailbox. Every detail was meticulously recorded in a special notebook, labeled with a unique code to ensure that no one else could decipher it. At midday, he stopped by a stationery store. "I need a red planner, exactly like this one," he said, showing the clerk a photo. Once the clerk found a matching planner, he also purchased another key to pair with it. "These items will be invaluable during the final stages of the program," he thought. Later that afternoon, new evidence arrived. Francis's team had caught Lucia and Tadeo on a date at the hotel's indoor pool. "Our team disguised themselves as tourists to blend in naturally," Francis explained, ensuring easy access to all areas. The two were photographed in moments of intimacy, completely absorbed in their own world as a couple. These new findings weighed heavily on Matteo's mind. He began sketching a detailed roadmap in his notebook, outlining the actions required at every critical moment. His background as an electrician had given him a deep understanding of building structures, knowledge he planned to use to bypass various security measures. By evening, Matteo crossed the city to visit an outdoor supply store, purchasing a few essential items. Every transaction was made in cash to avoid leaving any traceable electronic records. When he returned home, he dove into final preparations for the operation. He scrutinized every piece of evidence, the photographs, journal excerpts, and the operations roadmap, ensuring that every detail was flawless. The clock struck midnight, but his mind remained unusually sharp. Under the dim light of his study, Matteo reviewed the photographs one last time. Each image, provided by Francisco's team, offered undeniable proof of betrayal. Lucia's expression stood out, a happiness in her face that he hadn't seen in ages. When she confronted him, she had worn a different mask, but now, her joy felt like a stark betrayal. Outside the window, dark clouds once again blanketed the city, foreshadowing the storm to come. Matteo switched off the lamp and sat quietly in the darkness, knowing that tomorrow would be the day of action. He needed a clear head and unshakable resolve for what lay ahead. By the time the first rays of sunlight streamed into the room on the third morning, Matteo was completely ready. He double-checked every detail. The funds had been allocated correctly, the route had been verified twice, and everything was in its place. Now, all that remained was the final signal, the confirmation from Francisco that Lucia and Tadeo's trip was scheduled for today. That morning felt eerily calm, as if the entire world were holding its breath in anticipation of what was about to unfold. Matteo stood by the window, gazing at the rising sun, feeling an unexpected sense of peace. He knew that when the sun rose again, nothing would ever be the same. At 4 a.m. on the day of action, Matteo woke up and went through his checklist one last time. He ensured every item was in its designated place, classified envelopes filled with cash, a newly purchased journal, a set of tools, spare clothing, and other essentials. Each item was carefully positioned in different compartments of the car's trunk for immediate access when needed. He deliberately chose a dark waterproof jacket, a style he rarely wore, to remain inconspicuous. For added security, he packed 2 additional sets of clothing, each suited for the rest of the journey. By 5:30 a.m., he sent a final confirmation message to Francis. Shortly afterward, the reply came. Schedule confirmed. The seminar begins at 9. The operation was set to conclude at 2 p.m., after which the group would meet at the hotel for dinner. The ultimate goal was to return to the residence by 9:30 p.m. This schedule aligned perfectly with Matteo's plans, based on observations and detailed information provided by Francisco. Tadeo's routine was predictably consistent, which added a level of security to the entire operation. At precisely 6 a.m., Matteo began his meticulously crafted schedule. Step 1. Ensuring his movements remained untraceable. Matteo drove around the city, carefully choosing routes free from surveillance cameras. These paths had been repeatedly scouted and memorized to perfection, every turn, every intersection engraved in his mind. At 7 a.m., he stopped for breakfast at a small cafe 3 blocks away from Tadeo's apartment. The establishment had no surveillance equipment, and the patrons were too absorbed in their early morning routines to notice a lone diner quietly enjoying his meal. At 8:30 a.m., the first real-time update from Francisco arrived. The target has arrived at the location and is speaking with your wife. He seems to be in good spirits. Matteo silently finished the last sip of his coffee, rising with quiet determination to set his plan into motion. Between 9 a.m. and noon, he moved through various parts of the city, building his alibi. He visited a hardware store to purchase generic tools, browsed leisurely at a bookstore, and even stopped by a supermarket for basic supplies. All transactions made in cash to avoid leaving a digital trail. At 12 p.m., Matteo arrived at a pre-selected cafe. It was strategically located diagonally across from Tadeo's apartment, though the apartment's entrance was out of view, exactly as planned. This inconspicuous stop served as a convenient vantage point, while maintaining an air of normalcy. At 2 p.m., Francisco sent another update. The meeting has ended. The target and his wife are leaving the venue and heading to the hotel. This was the cue Matteo had been waiting for. He stood up, left the cafe, and made his way to his car. By 2:30 p.m., he parked in a predetermined location. The spot was not only a surveillance blind spot but also allowed for a swift exit if necessary. He donned a dark jacket and ensured his pockets were ready to hold his tools. Entering the apartment building proved easier than expected. As an experienced electrician, Mateo was intimately familiar with the vulnerabilities of the outdated access control system. In mere seconds, he slipped inside, blending seamlessly with the building's usual residents. Noticing that the 2 security cameras he had anticipated were out of order, Mateo smirked. This wasn't a coincidence. It was the result of his handiwork the previous day, temporarily disabling the devices without triggering alarms. Reaching Tadeo's door, Mateo retrieved his specially prepared tools, designed to leave no marks. In under a minute, the lock yielded, allowing him to enter as effortlessly as if he had a key. Inside, the apartment was just as he had seen in the photographs: a second-hand sofa in the living room, cheap decorative paintings on the walls, and papers along with textbooks scattered across the desk, the quintessential postgrad student's living quarters. Mateo methodically set the stage. He placed 3 key photographs on the desk, arranging them with precision to ensure they would be immediately noticeable upon entering the room. Next, he selected the perfect hiding spot, one that provided an unobstructed view of the door, while keeping him concealed in the shadows of the furniture. At 5 p.m., Francisco's latest update arrived. They're still at the hotel. Dinner reservations are at 7 p.m. This gave Mateo ample time. He used the opportunity to double-check every corner of the room, ensuring nothing was out of place and his plan remained flawless. The target and his wife are dining at the restaurant. It seems a bottle of red wine is ready, and they might stay longer. The waiting is always the hardest part. Mateo remained motionless in his position, ears attuned to every slight sound. He knew Tadeo's habits well. After dinner, he would take Lucia to a hotel before returning to their apartment. At 9:15, footsteps finally echoed through the hallway. Mateo's body tensed instantly. The footsteps grew louder until the faint click of a key entering a lock could be heard. The door opened, and Tadeo stepped in. He froze visibly when he turned on the light and noticed the photograph placed on the table. As he leaned in to examine the images more closely, Mateo silently closed the door behind him. "Good evening, Tadeo." Mateo's voice cut through the silence, calm yet unsettling. "I believe we need to talk." The young assistant coach spun around, his face instantly pale. He recognized Mateo, not in person, but from photos he'd seen on Lucia's phone. "I can explain," Tadeo stammered. "There's no need to explain," Mateo interrupted coldly. "The pictures speak for themselves." What unfolded next was carried out with the precision Mateo had meticulously planned. No noise, no sign of anything unusual. When it was over, Mateo meticulously inspected the scene, ensuring every detail was as anticipated. At exactly 10 p.m., he exited the apartment block, blending into the crowd as if nothing had happened. Once at his car, he changed clothes as planned, placing the original outfit into a prepared bag. By 10:30, he had started his pre-mapped escape route. The route took him through 3 distinct urban zones, each containing carefully planted false trails. He disposed of incriminating items in separate dumpsters to spread them out thoroughly. By midnight, Mateo began the long drive to Niagara Falls, a journey that would take approximately 7 hours. Along the way, he made several planned detours, refueling and resting at pre-selected stops, always paying in cash. At 5 a.m., he finally reached Niagara Falls. The roaring cascade drowned out all other sounds, making it the ideal place to discard the final pieces of evidence. Mateo threw his phone, remaining photographs, and any other potentially incriminating items into an isolated trash bin. As dawn broke, he donned his final disguise and parked his car in a tourist lot, ensuring security cameras captured its license plate. This would be the last false lead in his intricate plan. By the time the morning sunlight illuminated the waterfall, Matteo had already switched to a prearranged vehicle and embarked on a new journey. He knew that when authorities discovered the evidence trail, he would have long disappeared into obscurity. The morning news buzzed faintly on the car radio, but no reports of anything unusual had surfaced yet. Matteo was certain the calm would soon shatter, yet he, the key figure in the unfolding drama, would already be a ghost. His thoughts were unnervingly clear as he drove into the distance. Every step of his plan had unfolded flawlessly. Now, all that remained was to keep moving forward and never look back. Behind him lay the foundations of an elaborate plan for revenge, its intricate details beginning to reveal themselves. This was only the beginning. As sunlight streamed into the hotel room on Saturday morning, Lucia began packing her bags. She had tried unsuccessfully to reach Matteo the night before but received a brief text that morning. "I'm helping out at the town center." Unbeknownst to her, the story was already far from over, and Matteo had set its course into motion. She wouldn't be home until the afternoon, and the news was a relief. At least she had time to prepare herself. She checked her phone, and Taddeo still hadn't replied to her messages from the night before. This was odd, given that he always replied quickly, but she figured he must have been busy with something else. After all, they had planned to meet at school next week. On her way home, Lucia felt conflicted. The seminar days had brought her a rush of emotions she'd never experienced before, but with it came a deep sense of guilt. As she passed by a cafe, memories of the stolen moments she'd shared with Taddeo resurfaced, moments that now felt so dangerous. At 2 p.m., Lucia opened the door to her house. The house was eerily quiet, with only the ticking of the clock echoing in the stillness. She noticed a note pressed against the salt shaker on the kitchen table, written in Matteo's handwriting. It was a repeat of the text message. She tucked the note away and began unpacking her suitcase. Afterward, Lucia changed into something more comfortable and got ready to record the events of the last few days. Her red journal sat on the kitchen table, just as she was about to begin writing. A sharp ring of the doorbell cut through her thoughts. On the other side of the door were two men, a young officer, his hand always near his holster, and a middle-aged man in a suit with a serious expression. "I'm Detective Valdez, and this is Officer Santos," the man in the suit said, showing his badge. "We're looking for Matteo. Is he home?" "Matteo's at work," Lucia replied, trying to mask the nervousness in her voice. "What's going on? We'd better come in and talk," Valdez said, gesturing to the cold wind outside. Inside the kitchen, Lucia served coffee to the officers, noticing that Valdez was carefully surveying the room. His gaze lingered on her journal for a split second. "At 3 this morning," Valdez continued, opening his notebook. "We received a report about a case. The call came from your husband's cell phone. This must be some sort of misunderstanding," Lucia said, her voice trembling. "I should call him, just to be sure." She took out her phone and dialed Matteo's number, but the call went straight to voicemail. "Let's talk about something else," Valdez said, flipping to a new page in his notebook. "Do you know a man named Taddeo?" Hearing that name, Lucia's face went pale. She gripped her coffee cup so tightly her knuckles turned white. "Yes, he's my teaching assistant. But Matteo doesn't know him. It seems your husband knows more than you think," Valdez said. "He reported Taddeo's death to the police." Lucia froze. "What? That's impossible. I just saw him yesterday. How could—" Her voice cracked, unable to finish the sentence. Valdez pulled out a folder from his briefcase. "When we arrived at the scene, we found clear signs of a struggle. The coroner's preliminary report shows that Taddeo died between 6 and 8 p.m. We found this," he said, placing 3 photos in front of Lucia. Lucia collapsed as soon as she saw the photos. They were intimate pictures of her and Taddeo at a hotel, each one clearly documenting her betrayal. "No. This can't be," Lucia sobbed, her voice breaking. How could Mateo know about this? According to state records, Valdez continued, your husband has a permit for a .25 caliber handgun. The shell casings found at the scene matched that caliber exactly. At that moment, Valdez's phone rang. The call was brief, but the news was devastating. We've just recovered your husband's phone, credit cards, and a gun near Niagara Falls, Valdez said, his expression grave. We also found a new license plate. It looks like he's on the move. The news shattered Lucia completely. Her screams grew louder as the reality of the situation became painfully clear, the weight of the betrayal crashing down on her. And the terrifying Valdez takes another photo, this time zooming in on a small brass key. Do you recognize this? Lucia shuddered as she pulled the key from her agenda in her purse. The two keys were identical. He knows everything, she murmured. Seeing Lucia in such a state, Agent Santos suggested reaching out to her family. Lucia provided her sister Isabel's phone number. Isabel had always been her biggest source of support, having taken care of her throughout her university years. Now, Isabel was the only one left to offer her any support. While they waited for Isabel's arrival, the agents carefully recorded Lucia's testimony. She spoke intermittently about her recent seminar experience, but was vague about what had happened before. It was 4 p.m. when Isabel arrived. Seeing her sister break down, she immediately understood that something serious had happened. The agents informed her of the situation and advised her not to leave Lucia alone for a while. As Valdez and Santos walked toward the car, the young agent asked, "Do you think we'll be able to catch him?" "It depends on how well he hides," Valdez replied. "He's not the kind of serial killer who will keep committing crimes. He'll probably try to stay under the radar. It's going to be hard to find him unless we make it a national manhunt." "What about the mobile phone?" Santos paused, deep in thought. "I think Lucia is telling the truth," he said. Over the next few days, the police expanded their search. They reviewed all possible footage from security cameras, interviewed potential witnesses, and tracked every suspicious bank transaction. But Mateo seemed to vanish into thin air, leaving no useful trace behind. It didn't take long for the school to find out. Lucia had to take a leave of absence. She couldn't face the stares of her colleagues or students. Isabel moved in temporarily to help her through this difficult time. A week later, the police had to admit that the case might remain unsolved. Of all the evidence collected, the most striking piece was the Red Diary. Not only did it document the breakup of a marriage, but it also served as the catalyst for an elaborate revenge plan. The prosecution detailed their findings to Lucia. Based on the scene's evidence, this was a well-executed operation. Every detail was meticulously planned, leaving no traceable clues. Even the security footage near Niagara Falls only shows Mateo's car passing by. It doesn't capture him in person. Over time, the case became a topic of discussion among the local police. Some speculated that Mateo had left the country, while others believed he had reformed and started a new life somewhere else. But only Lucia knew the truth, that the kind and loving husband she once knew was gone for good. As Isabel helped Lucia organize her home, she discovered several photos of the couple together. In every photo, Mateo had a warm smile, and his eyes were filled with love for his wife. Those photos now seemed like a silent accusation against Lucia. The police report on the case was finally closed, stating that the suspect's whereabouts were unknown. But for Lucia, the case would never be truly closed. She began to realize that the man she thought she knew was far more complex than she had ever imagined. She would never know the pain Mateo felt when he read her diary, the night he discovered the truth. Months later, Lucia resigned from her position at the university. She couldn't bear to continue working in a place filled with memories. The office, the podium, everything reminded her of the betrayal she had experienced. Isabel helped her find a new job in a different city, hoping her sister could start fresh. Before leaving, Lucia picked up the red agenda one last time. Those words documented her loss and bore witness to the collapse of a marriage. She finally understood that sometimes, the most terrifying thing isn't the loss itself, but realizing that everything was her own doing. And somewhere far away, Matteo was probably starting a new life, not only taking the evidence of his betrayal but also the kind and loving man she once knew. This orchestrated revenge didn't just take vengeance on the betrayer, it changed everyone's destiny forever. In the police files, the case report rests quietly on a shelf. Another mystery unresolved. Thank you for listening to this story full of emotional highs and lows. We'd love to know where in the world you're watching this video right now. What time is it where you are? Let us know in the comments. Good morning, good afternoon, or good night. I hope you have a wonderful day ahead. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more content. I look forward to seeing you again in another story.